I'm sure most of us who grew up in the 90s remember the show Ed, Edd and Eddy. It was one of Cartoon Network's greatest shows, at least in my opinion. It was definitely a decent show, but apparently that's only because of the filter that Cartoon Network put on the content produced by the creator, Danny Anichusi. Of course, this wasn't always the case. There was a time that Ed, Edd and Eddy was much, much darker. The original pilot for the show, which was never released to the public at large, was entitled Ed is Dead. Now you might be wondering how I came across this, and how I know about this episode. Let's just say I have friends in both high and low places within the animation industry, and one of them have actually sent me a digital copy of this episode. I can't really upload it due to copyright reasons and things like that. And I mean, now I know what you're probably thinking about this. It's probably just some stupid Halloween special or something like that. And, well, you'd be wrong on that. This thing goes beyond a typical Halloween fare of ghosts and ghouls or witches and devils, and almost seems to have break through the fourth wall. Now, here's where I recount the horror that I witnessed. The episode starts off like any other episode of this beloved childhood classic. You see the three Eds acting their typical goofy selves. Even the beginning scenes seem lighthearted, just like the show itself. The episode starts with Eddy walking down the street, looking rather annoyed. He has a black eye and a few other scrapes, and he seems to be muttering something about Kevin, so one can assume that it was yet another one of his scams that failed, resulting in a serious beatdown. He rounds a corner and comes up to Double D's house. By the way, just a quick interjection, doesn't that name sound a little pervy to you? I mean, sounds to me like the writer had tits on the brain, among other not-for-kid kind of things. The part of the episode seems fairly normal as Eddy appears to be going around to rouse Double D to exploit his large brain underneath his hat. But things get a little weird. Eddy turns towards the camera, blinks twice, shakes his head, and then stares out at the viewer. He shakes his fist at the audience and then storms up to Double D's door and knocks loudly. Double D answers, though not in his usual attire. This time Double D is wearing what looks like a hazmat suit. He had a pair of tongs in his right hand. The tongs were holding what appeared to be just an ordinary sock. Eddy stares up at him. "What's with the spacesuit?" Eddy asks sarcastically. Double D shakes his head. "This is not a spacesuit. It's a hazardous materials suit. And if you excuse me, there's something I really need to work on." Double D responds, starting to close the door. However, Eddy sticks his foot in the door. "Please, Double D, I need your help," Eddy says, a bit panicked. At this point, the viewer begins to feel that something has gone terribly wrong, as the music that was typical in the show begins to delve into a darker theme. Even the animation style darkens a bit. "I don't have any time for your scams. I have a very important research to do," Double D said, crushing Eddy's foot in the door. Eddy lets out a comedic scream as his foot is flattened in a cartoonish manner. "You don't understand," Eddy says, pounding on the door. "It's Ed!" Suddenly, the door creaks open again. Double D stares at Eddy, a vague look of horror on his face. "Come on in," Double D says, his voice no longer agitated, a sort of a calm yet frightened sound to it. Double D immediately closes the door behind Eddy and immediately grabs a large contraption made from a vacuum cleaner set to blow a bottle of bleach water, some sort of detector, and a computer screen. Double D proceeds to spray Eddy with the solution, hoping to decontaminate him from any outside agents. Double D looked cautiously at the screen, and once a green thumbs up appeared, he breathed a sigh of relief. "What about Ed?" Double D inquired. "We were working a scam, you see, and everything was fine until..." The show cuts to a flashback. In the flashback, we see Ed and Eddy behind what appears to be a ramshackle little counter, selling what they claim to be lemonade. It looks like lemonade, has ice and even a lemon wedge in it. But it wasn't. It was a hot summer day in the cul-de-sac and the kids were really thirsty. Sarah and Jimmy are first in line and they cough up 50 cents for a glass of lemonade. They look at Eddy suspiciously, having been swindled before. But they take the increasingly size of the glass to mean that perhaps the boys had changed. Naz and Kevin buy some, as does Rolf and Johnny, though Johnny buys two, one for him and one for Plank. Having swindled everybody else, he begins to sneak away with his ill-gotten gains. "Hey!" screams Kevin. Naz is on her knees, vomiting. "What was that?" Kevin says angrily, grabbing the wrench that he had been using to fix his bike. Instinctively, Eddy begins to run, Ed right behind him. "Run away! Run away!" he shouts, fleeing his furious sister with the rest of the neighborhood. "How dare you trick Rolf!" shouts Rolf as he runs after the group. This sort of thing is fairly normal for the show. Just as Eddy and Ed think that they're safe, they have a rather unfortunate turn of events. Standing in their path is the Kanker sisters, who, as usual, want a kiss. Eddy offers them some of his money if they let them pass, but the Kankers don't take the offer. To make matters worse, the neighborhood had finally caught up with the boys. Everyone is furious. Johnny is holding Plank like a club, Kevin has his bike wrench, and Sarah just has her insane brute force. Jimmy, while furious, is hiding behind Sarah. You went too far this time," Naz says, spitting every few seconds to get the disgusting taste out of her mouth. "Yeah, it's pounding time," Kevin says, slapping the wrench into his palm. To the shock of the two condemned, the Kankers step forward to defend them. For once, Eddy and Ed are happy to see them. A large brawl breaks out between the two groups, with the Kankers largely overwhelmed. Kevin, Jimmy, and Sarah manage to sneak away and follow the two con artists, unknown to them. As Eddy is about to reach the candy store, he's suddenly taken down by Kevin, who begins mercilessly beating him. Sarah grabs Ed and drags him down the street. "I'm telling Mom!" "No!" Ed yells. The scene fades as Jimmy stands there laughing while Eddy was continued to be clubbed by Kevin. "After Kevin stole my hard-earned cash, I went to find Ed so he could set up another scam," Eddy said, his eyes beginning to tear up. "I found him eating Sarah," Eddy said in horror. Once again, the scene went to a flashback. The flashback begins with Ed screaming at Sarah not to tell Mom. Suddenly, Sarah begins to growl, his constant pleading annoying her. She then turns and starts hitting him. The crazy strength in Ed's family made every blow worse. "Ow! Ow! Buttered toast," Ed said as he was beaten by a merciless Sarah. She punched him in the face so hard that his face, in a cartoonish style, caved in, and then Ed went limp. It was at this point that we see Eddy coming into the scene. Sarah shaking Ed, trying to wake him up, but his huge urine spot in his pants showed that he had lost control of his bladder. She checks his pulse, and there is none. She starts to stutter and cry, having really loved her idiot brother. Suddenly his eyes snap open. Sarah lets out a sigh of relief. The animation then starts to change, becoming realistic. The line stops shaking and the artwork becomes more detailed. Buttered toast," he shouts as he tears into Sarah's arm, ripping a huge chunk of flesh out and consuming it. She screams and starts hitting him, but it has no effect. She can't wriggle free. The blood around Ed's mouth is as thick as he continues to consume her body, all the while chanting "buttered toast" between mouthfuls. Her screams soon fall silent as she bleeds to death. Eddy is shaking. Double D is in the room, pacing around, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't believe it spread so far," Double D said, as looking at the sock as he held in his tongs. "I took this from Ed's room last time I was there. I had wanted to study bacteria, and I thought Ed's room was just the perfect place to find them, but this," Double D said, moving the sock over to a table where other samples lay. "What is it?" Eddy asked. "I wish I knew, but Ed is infected with it," Double D said. Double D begins to hurry now, stuffing supplies into a suitcase. "We have to leave the cul-de-sac. It's not safe here," Double D said, handing Eddy a suitcase. "I'm not sure anywhere is safe." Double D and Eddy turned towards the door and opened it. They were forced to back away in sheer terror. Standing before them was Ed, his face dripping with blood. Next to him was Sarah, her ribs literally showing and one arm completely missing. Every person in the cul-de-sac stood there moaning. Pounding time," groaned Kevin. Before Double D and Eddy could turn and run away, they were overcome. Biting mouths ripped the flesh off of their bones. Eddy and Double D let out blood-curdling screams before falling silent. But they remained silent for only a moment, before they both rose up. "Cash," moaned Eddy. Shower? Moaned DW. And chickens! Moaned Ed. The scene panned out, and as they did, something strange happened. There was a dome around the area where the show was shot, like glass. But this dome and everything around it contained floated in pitch darkness. Surrounding it were the three Kanker sisters. Just as the credits were about to roll, the Kanker sisters turned towards the audience. "What are you so freaked out about?" May said. "You're dead too." After this, the screen flashed with a picture of a deteriorated cartoon-looking face. I didn't know what to really think about it. Oh god, it was weird. I tried showing this video to a friend of mine, but he insisted that he saw something else too. But there was something else odd about it. Underneath the face was a date of birth and death date. I didn't know what exactly it even meant, or what exactly was going on with the damn thing. But still. And it's unfortunate, though. Every single person that I've ever shown this to apparently tells me the same exact thing. And that, my little shadows, was Ed is Dead, an Ed, and Eddy creepypasta. My final thoughts on the story? I have to admit, this was a really, really good creepypasta. I liked it. I really genuinely did. Up until around the ending, though. But I'm going to get to that in a little bit. Let's start off with the actual story itself. I liked it a lot. I liked the fact, the main thing I liked about the story was the fact that the episode itself was very realistic and portrayed very well with the actual, content that Ed and Eddy actually has, but with zombies and things like that, which I think that concept played out very, very well. I liked the feeling of forebodingness during the episode itself, and I liked that there was a detailed explanation as to what exactly happened with Ed and why all this crazy stuff happened, and things like that. I also liked the little quips and everything and the jokes that were in there, that were actually there, because it really helped, build up a lot more with the actual, with the story. And it honestly seemed to me like it could actually be a real Ed, and Eddy, story. I mean, if you've ever known any of the work before of the creator himself, I think Dan was his name, if you actually know any more of it, you'll know that before he made Ed, and Eddy, he actually made this series called The Brothers Grunt, which is extremely uncomfortable to look at. I cringe just thinking about the whole thing. But still, though, if, the creator could make something like that, who's to say that Ed, and Eddy wasn't originally going to have an extremely dark, concept to it? I mean, if he could make The Brothers Grunt, he could make a really screwed up Ed, and Eddy episode. But there's a big difference, though. The Ed, and Eddy series and everything that he did was absolutely amazing. And even this episode itself would be beautiful if it actually had been made. It actually blends well with an element of horror, fear, and a little bit of comedy, too. I mean, it matches up so well with the series, which is amazing. I mean, of course, though, this is just an author making it, but still, to the author, I give you a lot of credit for really giving it your all when it comes to making this episode. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm actually watching a Ed and Eddy, episode. Now, despite all these wonderful things, is there anything negative about it? The answer to that question is unfortunately yes, and that's up to around the ending. This is where I think the episode itself just kind of went downhill. Now, you guys should have, listened to the fact that I said that there was faces and everything. But there was actually something I completely took out of it because I really didn't want to. I do that a lot with, really bad parts and stories. But it said here that there was a picture of a human face that popped up, and that it was actually, a picture of the protagonist face, and that there was also a picture of, a friend's, face, or two faces, and it would just continue on going on, and the death date, and things like that. And that, now, I'm not going to say that ruined the story, because it didn't. It was a really crappy ending, but still, though, the beauty and the effort and everything put into the rest of the story from, before the ending came by, I think helped save the story a lot, in more ways than you'd think. Now, the ending, however, was really, really bland, it did not help, and it was just really boring, too. And a little bit infuriating a bit, too, because, think of it. all this amazing work and everything, and that's just where it goes by with the ending? I mean, come on. The rest of the story, however, was just downright beautiful. Amazing concept, amazing storytelling. I loved every ounce of it except for the ending. But like I always say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own thoughts in regards to these creepypastas, and I would genuinely like to know what you guys think about this one too. My final rating of the story is a 8 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 because, minus the ending, the rest of the story was very beautifully made. Very crazy, creepy, realistic in a sense, and more importantly, just downright awesome. I mean, it really does suck though this was on the Creepypasta, on creepypasta.com though. I mean, the ending, like I said, I don't think the ending really ruined anything of it. I mean, it was boring and it was just, really, that sucked. But still, I mean, the rest of the story was very well made, and if anything, it sucks that it's on the Creepypasta wiki. But then again though, better there than on the Goshia wiki or the Spin Pasta. Although I think Spin Pasta would probably be a better place for this story, because it is relatively good. It's a very good story, I enjoyed it a lot, but of course, like I said, it has an 8 because the ending just really didn't do it well. It didn't kill the story, but it didn't really do the story a whole lot of justice either. What did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not? Also, what would you have done to help make this story a lot better? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I'm the Shadow Eater, thanks again for watching today's episode, and like always, roll the outro because...
In fear and surprise as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to thee, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.